practice, practice, practice. And from that note, one of the biggest challenges before we really get into the nitty-gritty is negative thoughts. If you're building up to a meet, you're building up to a major competition, negative thoughts can be a significant detriment and one of the biggest challenges to overcome. So here's a wee example, the power of your thoughts. How heavy is a water bottle? Doesn't really matter how heavy it is. Here's a water bottle. I'm sure lots of you have them around you. If you hold it out at arm's length for a minute, that's manageable. Everyone can do that. Everyone in the room will be able to do that, no problem. Hold it out for an hour, your arm's really going to start to ache. Hold it there all day, it'll be numb with pain. You'll be really, really struggling physically, mentally. You can apply the same process to holding on to negative thoughts. If things become a burden and sort of weigh you down, they're going to become a detriment and they're really going to take over your actions and everything you do. Conversely to this, if we can develop a confidence and a plan and a set of routines that reinforces good behaviors, positive thoughts, then we can refocus our attention onto what really matters. And how can we refocus our attention? Well, if we think back to the sessions that we've covered, there's goal setting, process, outcome, and performance. There's our journals and diaries, self-regulation and reflection, getting things out, getting it out there, cathartic writing. There's the thought stopping and cognitive restructuring. How can we reframe our situation from a threat to a challenge? How can we reframe it to an opportunity? Take that negative thought process, flip it, and you've got a set plan and a way to break it down and approach it. You'll be in a positive place. And imagery, probably the biggest aspect of today's session, how we really link it all together with progressive, muscular relaxation, imagery, and then task simulation, which we'll get to. The real underlying aspect of all this, though, is our plan, preparation, and our routines. So from here, I want us to look back at last week's session and think about what we talked about with Zoe, their pre-performance routines. What are our pre-performance routines? Well, there are a set of sequences, task-relevant thoughts, actions, processes to systematically engage in our performance mentality, our performance approach. You're really putting together a process to reinforce learned behaviors and positive learned behaviors towards a performance, and it can be a set routine of any aspect in a peak performance. And the key difference is it's not superstition, as Zoe's pointed out. If we're thinking about getting ready to put our suit on, it's not about our lucky pair of socks. They might be important to you, but it's about the process of getting yourself ready, putting your suit on, getting your clothes on, getting yourself ready, your hat and goggles. You might have a lucky hat or a lucky pair of goggles, but it doesn't really matter. There's a real difference between a pre-performance routine and your superstition. But the routine itself can be applied to lots of different scenarios, like the build-up to a competition the day before, the day of, call room scenarios. And that's the topic we're going to touch on in today's session, but also next week in particular, because it's a huge aspect of our peak performance. So why might they be useful? Well, there's lots of reasons why peak performance routines might be useful, as Zoe touched on last week. Purposeful attention, refocusing and distraction from that negative attention. Like we talked about with the negative thoughts process, if you're distracting from those negative thoughts, you can refocus on what really matters. You trigger the well-learned movements. Recall what you've practiced. And for the purposes of this session in particular, it keeps you grounded and level-headed. Think of those grounding techniques. We're trying to achieve that relaxed mental state to encourage confidence, so we can perform at our best without being distracted or disrupted. It keeps you focused on what truly matters. So from here, why should we plan? Sounds like a bit of an effort, thinking about all this stuff, putting together a process and approach. Well, we're thinking about the swimmers at ISL right now. They are the best athletes that are well established, well practiced, pre-performance plans and routinized behaviors. They'll have gone through many iterations of preparation, how they approach races, how they conduct themselves to help prepare for their peak performance. And that's really what we're looking at today. It's that old saying, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. It's not quite as extreme as that, because obviously you need to be in a more relaxed mindset, but the basis of that does make sense. And today we're really going to look into methods and approaches, tools to really reinforce those behaviors and start to get you thinking about how to establish a plan, how to establish a routine, and then really start to think about what works for you. So this looks like a lot, than it is initially. And this is really the basis of where we're going to start. You need to really think about what is important for you. We're not going to go into all this in detail, but the point is you need to lay information down first and foremost to really think about what is important for you. When do you put on your suit? What's your approach to a call room routine? Do you nap during sessions? What do you do the day before? What goes in your competition bag? You need to develop a routine and plan months before and really practice it. If you establish these patterns, behaviors, approaches now, it'll put you in a fantastic position later on in life as a senior athlete. I wish I applied myself more to this sort of stuff when I was younger, rather than in my late teens or early 20s. Each competition is an opportunity to practice and refine this. And throughout this session, we're going to look at examples on how to do it, but the overarching message is there's lots of different ways, and what works for you. So, little pause here, breakout room 1. So what we're going to do here is just have a think about your plan. Do you have a plan? Do you have a routine? Could you be a bit more prepared? Do you think sometimes you're a bit up in the air when you get to a competition? Do you forget things? Maybe think about how you can establish a plan, how you can establish a routine, and crucially, how you can practice it and put it all together. So on that, Jamie, if we can initiate some breakout rooms there.
Yep, breakout rooms are all ready. You're in small groups, 5s and 6s, so don't need to be shy. You all know each other by now. So we'll just start the rooms right now. Apologies if I've cut anybody off mid-sentence.
That's all good.
Is that long enough, Jack? That all right?
Yeah, that was bang on, bang on. 5 minutes is good. Just enough to get a wee bit of a conversation and then fire away from there. So I'll just give it a couple more 30 seconds or so for that minute to finish, and then we can have a wee bit of discussion, and then we'll crack on. So just while people are coming back in, there's some really interesting stuff that came up in my group. Different plans, approaches. People were talking about music, sort of experimenting and training, different ways to plan their approach. Talking to their coach was a great one. I won't talk too much in case anyone else wants to share from their group, but maybe at this point I'll open up and see if anyone else has a bit of conversation or discussion to share.
That's the point where everybody goes shy.
No, it's all good. It's an opportunity to learn from each other. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to talk in an open group like this. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from our group was experimenting and learning what works for you. That's the biggest takeaway. It's not going to be as easy as this is planned and this is how it works. Room 7 did well, thumbs up, that's good to hear. What else? Yeah, another thing that came up is people with visualization, not really sure necessarily how to implement it on the day of. So I had some good chat about the days before and even the week beginning, but then on the actual day, they're unsure how to actually apply it before race scenario, or maybe little periods of downtime before races. So I think that was a really interesting point that we can unpack a bit. From there, I'm just going to jump into the next set of slides. So that should be good to go now with the next group. We all see that? All good? So here's an overview of a week. Now, this might look a bit detailed and a bit overwhelming at first, but the reason it's detailed is because I'll be referring to it later in this session and next week, but this is a great starting point to lay out the week before a competition. Where are my training sessions? When roughly am I going to be waking up? This is a period of flow that we're going through, from waking up, breakfast, travel. In my group, we were talking about putting the music on when we're traveling, and then little periods before races. What are we doing? We're getting in our routine behaviors and setting ourselves up for priming and getting our suit on. And this is a real key point. And when to approach a week like this, it's great to think about, well, what am I doing on Monday? What am I doing to set myself up for the Friday? Am I getting my sleep patterns in order? Am I maybe assigning some time for PMR and visualization? You know, maybe later in the evenings is an opportunity to set myself up on a Tuesday morning with a bit of a race sim. You know, this is a real opportunity to kind of lay out, what does my week look like? And the timings along the side don't bear too much weighting. It's just half-hour windows roughly to give you an idea. And usually the week beginning of a competition, you can get some timings and information, but this can really be a template to apply, and it gets you thinking, what are my objectives the day before, the morning of, at the venue, and a summary of real key points. What are the main takeaways? So from here, again, detail, you can get this information when the sides are put out, but the objective, day before, morning of, venue, final phase, and key points. Really laying yourself out and thinking, how do I reach my physical, mental, and emotional performance state? What are the processes involved here? What am I doing the day before? Maybe chatting with a coach, bit of mental rehearsal. It's imagery and cue cards that we'll come to. Morning of the competition, periods of reflection at the venue, all this stuff. It's just a great way to kind of lay out, what will it take, or what do I want to be doing? What are the key takeaways for me? And even a summary of emphasis, you could literally just take this section here and think, what am I trying to do? Confidence and commitment to the process. It's all little cue reminders that kind of push you towards getting in that right mentality and performance state. And the key point from this as well, things won't run smoothly. Don't always attach timings or exacts to everything, because it won't run like that and never will. And that's a key point that we'll come to in 5 or 10 minutes when things go wrong, which is probably more important than anything. Checklists is another great skill that you can apply to really put yourself in that race-specific planning mode. What do I need? And kind of what are the processes involved in putting together my competition bag? This is stuff that I would always put in my bag. I would usually have 2 bags, a backup, maybe some food nutrition bag, and I would cover all bases. Your bag, or your checklist, I should say, will look different. Might be longer, might be shorter. Really, the point is, it's what you need, and it's what you'll have to really get yourself ready. And also, having a checklist is like a form of catharsis. If you're the day before putting together your bag, or even the week beginning thinking, oh, what food will I need? What nutrition stuff? Maybe go say to my mum or dad to go to the shops, go out and get it myself. You get yourself in that racing frame of mind. And the day before, it's almost right, ready mode. What am I doing? Race suits, bottles, headphones, lay it all out, and it really gets you in that performance state. And it means that the day of, you're not thinking, have I forgot a towel? Have I forgot my trunks? I'm sure we've all been there, leaving race suits, hats. These things happen. Oh, I've dropped my water bottle, don't have one. Oh, I don't have food. Oh, I've kind of shot myself in the foot there. You know, there's lots of situations where this can be relevant. Seems like such a simple thing, but it can be applied in lots of ways. And a great example of contingency was a friend of mine. There was a training camp abroad. He was meant to return on the Thursday, racing the Friday. Flight was delayed. He then had to travel on the Friday morning, and he was racing on the Friday. So that's a stressful situation to be in. He needs to come home, dump his stuff, repack, head out the door. His mum had a copy of a checklist, not as detailed as this, but a rough idea of what was involved. And he said to his mum, can you put my bag together? I need to come in and dump my stuff and leave straight away. And long and short of it was a completely de-stressed situation that could have been very stressful. Got to the meeting, there was no worries. And I've been there myself, not quite in that example, but I've come back from a competition, a training camp, gone straight to a meet and been pretty disorganized. And I've forgotten stuff and it's not gone well. And that's probably a situation where a checklist would have been a great tool to have. So from here, let's think about cue cards. So again, it's another tool to really reinforce some of our plans and routine behaviors. So we're going to look at 2 examples, one relating to our plan and one relating to PMR. And it's how you can really take a little snapshot of a week overview or a snapshot of a specific skill and really focus your attention and reinforce what you've planned and take it onto race day with you. It could just be writing stuff in a sheet of paper. That's a cue card. It could be motivational quotes. It could be related to your process goals. There's lots of different ways to apply a cue card, but it simply is a way to remind yourself of your performance specific behaviors and how to really engage with that aspect when it matters most. So this is the overview that we looked at. And this example here, we're just looking from the Friday, wake up, down to just after the first race. So that's what this cue card is. So if we're looking at Friday, wake up, down to race 1, a little snapshot. In this example, if you're approaching a 3-day meet, multi-discipline 3-day meet, you really want to have a plan that sets the tone. It can be quite nerve-wracking in the build-up to a big competition. If you've not raced for a while, which maybe lots of us haven't, your first race can really set the tone for the rest of the competition. So what you do in the lead up can be really important. Again, the detail here will change from person to person. I've given it here so you can look back on this and really look at it and break it down. But the point is, if we're thinking of our routine and our behaviors, like Zoe talked about, it's sequential. We're going through a process from A down to B or A to Z, and it's how we get there and what we're doing and how we stay grounded, highlighting key points of opportunity to engage in some relaxation, some priming, maybe getting your suit on, getting your stuff together. All this stuff gives you clarity of what's ahead. And it can be as shortened or simplified as you like, or longer. You know, you can literally have this printed off in your pocket, refer to it, and as you get better and better, you can reduce it and it just becomes cues. And again, key point, the timings are just windows because it will never run smoothly, it will never run exact, but know that you've got this here just in case when things do go wrong. And thinking about PMR, so I've referred to it or introduced it several weeks ago now. Zoe reinforced it. PMR is a great gateway to relaxation, and it's a great gateway to imagery and visualization. And it's a key emphasis that we've been referring to in the last few weeks. This is a cue card that kind of just compresses it all into one neat little bundle, if you like. It's 1 to 4, repeat, different muscle groups. And that's another example of how you can really focus on a specific skill and reinforce the learning of that specific skill. And PMR specifically is really useful for call room behaviors or day of behaviors that we'll be referring to in the next session. And then on that, PMR, cue cards in general, you could have 1 to 4 of your process goals or grounding techniques. It's little reminders of what you can do or things that can be done to really put you in that position of performance readiness. So at this point, we've got an idea of plans and routines and kind of how to approach developing a plan and routine. So let's hypothetically say we've got a rough plan now. We kind of know an order or sequence of events and how we want to apply it. The biggest aspect is how do you practice it and how do we learn from it? Lots of different ways, you know, we talked about in that breakout room with coaching input, learning from your peers, own research, experimenting, you know, there's lots of different ways. One of the best ways is task simulation. And that task simulation can be both physically or psychologically, as in mentally. You can apply yourself to a situation where you simulate a task in training. There's an example in the group that I was in where you're almost getting ready, you were acting out the situation in training. So you're stepping up, you're going through your process of preparing, maybe you're practicing your warm-up, you're simulating it in an environment that is controlled to you, so then you can get in a comfortable space and become more confident, reinforcing those technical skills and learn skills. And there's a real connection with imagery and PMR to connect in the mind and body, which is a key aspect that you can lean into your visualization. If you're task simulating in your head, all sorts of scenarios, think back to the last session, whether you were there, or if you're not, I'll introduce the video with Phelps and Coach Bowman, thinking about how many times they would simulate a task, they would visualize, and how they would use it to relax before going to bed, but also in a performance environment, getting ready. And if you think about the race itself, how you feel the nerves, excitement, the biggest takeaway, the most important aspect out of all of this is you can plan, you can plan, you can plan, you can be the most prepared athlete, but if you're not ready for when things go wrong, it doesn't matter, because that is probably the most important thing, and the most defining characteristic of the top athletes, those that are prepared when things go wrong, when your suit rips, your hat rips, your goggles come off, there's a delay in the program, really reinforces those characteristics of excellence. How do you react when things are difficult? How do you react when there's a challenge in front of you? Well, you prepare. What would you do in this situation? Phelps, again, great example of this. You can't go wrong with some of the situations he's brought forward and the experiences he's gone through. 2008, the 200 fly final, his goggles filled with water. He dove in, I should say, goggles immediately filled up. Nightmare scenario. And he actually describes this in detail in his first book in 2009, No Limits, The Will to Succeed. And I remember reading it as a young kid at the time and thinking, I was amazed at how he did this. How would you complete a 200 fly, an Olympic final, with your goggles filled with water and still win a gold medal and an Olympic record? And that image is him at the end of the block, covering his eyes. And if you've seen the race or not, you'll be able to look at it, and implore you to look. And he's clearly distraught by it. And if you think back again to what we've talked about, he's visualized the best and the worst case scenarios. And think back to the video specifically that Zoe showed. When I visualize what I want to be, what I want it to be, what I don't want it to be, and what it could be. He's visualizing all these scenarios, everything that could go wrong, and everything that he wants to happen, but all the worst case. And he'd planned for this, he'd prepared. Maybe those among you know how he managed the situation, but to that, I'd maybe invite you to think about it. This is an important breakout room to really think, how did Phelps manage? And how would you manage? Maybe you can think of a scenario where something has gone wrong. What has gone wrong in the build up to a competition? I'm sure there's plenty of examples you can think of. What did you do in the situation? Did you panic? Were you in a bit of a flap? Maybe you kind of got a bit upset. I'm sure we've all been there. Then from that, and what we've just discussed, how do you think you could plan for things going wrong? And how could you practice for things going wrong? So if we could jump into the next breakout group and think about that, things going wrong. Key theme.
Okay, rooms are ready. We'll keep the rooms as they were before, so you should be familiar with each other, and we shall catch up in a bit. Okay.
I'm back.
Oh, things going wrong. Things going wrong seem to be a hot topic there. Hot off the press from the weekend now, literally this weekend, which is quite interesting. I'm sure even out with the last couple of days, people can think of plenty of times where things have gone wrong. Let people join back in. Still got 20 or so to come in.
Yeah.
Any discussion in your group, Zoe?
Yeah, we could think of a few things that went wrong and things that we might do moving forward to prepare for if things go wrong. So yeah, it was a good bit of discussion.
Nice. Yeah, so I think that's everyone back in. One of the biggest takeaways, I think, in mine was when warm-ups are cut short. That was a big one. That was very fresh off the back of the weekend. And packed warm-ups, situations that are very much out with your control. Most things going wrong are out with your control, but those ones in particular, if you've got a ripped suit or a ripped hat or goggles, if you have a spare, that's controllable to an extent, but a packed warm-up or a cut short warm-up is not. And really, that can be an overwhelming scenario. That can be pretty intense. That can be, that could be a nail in the coffin for the swim as far as it goes if you get too overwhelmed. And the biggest takeaway from our group was, well, now that you've gone through it and you've experienced it, what do you learn from it? And how can you maybe prepare? Maybe have a land-based backup warm-up. Maybe something you can do on land if your pool time's cut short, or if it's too packed in the pool. You really need to focus on priming before you get in. Really more technical aspect in the water, and then land-based priming. There's different things you can touch on, but there was some interesting conversations in groups there. And I hope that you guys took the opportunity to kind of learn from your peers, and maybe just get a wee bit more critical thinking behind it. So with that all being said, we'll go into the last phase of the chat. Task simulation and practice. So how do you prepare for when things go wrong? Well, we've touched on a few examples there, but the biggest underlying aspect is practice, 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 and practice some more. Whether you simulate the task physically, maybe try a stand-up swim with no goggles on, is a wild idea. And those that don't know how Phelps managed in that situation, he referred to stroke counts and kicks off the wall. He knew roughly, based off the amount of times he'd practiced his race and the amount of times he'd visualized his race, the 200 fly in particular, he referred to stroke counts and kicks off the wall, and that was a rough guide. And you could see in the race itself that he actually came up short a few times, or maybe too close, but he fairly, as a whole, got there. That's a great example of you're simulating it psychologically with your PMR and visualization. That's how these things really connect. If you're just thinking about your race, obviously the process of it going through, but maybe it's something you've not done before, but think about things going wrong. Think about your hat coming off. What would you do? Or maybe your warm-up getting cut short. How would you react in that situation? Well, you can think it's okay. I've still got time. I'm level-headed here. I've got backup warm-up in my repertoire. I've talked to my coach about this. We know how to handle this situation. I've been there myself. I've practiced plenty of times where I've been prepping on a Monday or a Friday for a race sim, and I thought, well, I'm going to cut my warm-up short and see how I react to it. Purposefully in my head, or sometimes I've said to my coach, just throw a spanner in the works, like mix things up a bit, and he'll say, oh, there's been a delay. You're going to sit in the call room for 20 minutes. So I'll be sitting there ready to go and think, oh, I'm in a great position right now to get in the water, execute my race, practice swim. And he'll say, oh no, I want you to sit there for 20 minutes. And then I'm just ready, annoyed that I'm ready, but can't swim. But it was a great practice to get myself in that situation of, this is uncontrollable. I need to sit here in my suit. I'm sitting here ready in all my warm clothes, and I just need to wait. And it's how you cope and manage that situation. And this links strongly to next week when we're talking about call room behaviors, which is a huge aspect in any high performance sport. Your peak performance can be implicated, negatively or positively by what you do or how you conduct yourself in a call room. It can be a huge deciding factor. But all that being said, if you get yourself as ready as possible for the worst case scenarios, whether it's visualizing it, going through it physically in training, you will be as ready as possible for when things are going well. And when things do go well, maybe even not perfectly, you'll be in a more relaxed and positive mindset and state. So why does all of this matter? Why does planning, process, getting yourself ready, task simulating? Well, think back to that original quote on the slide. The best predictor of self-confidence is perceived readiness. The best athletes have well-established and well-practiced routines and behaviors. If you feel ready and you know you're ready and you're prepared for situations, you'll be confident. And again, if there's any takeaway from the session today, one takeaway, readiness equals confidence, and confidence equals a state of peak performance, or at least as best possible state that you can be in. If you feel confident in your situation and your setup, if you're organized, prepared, practiced, and ready for when things go wrong, you'll be in a great place when things go right. Key points from the session. Let's think back to what we've gone over. We've thought about attention control, maybe when negatives are getting in our head in the build-up, and then applying those learned skills. We're applying the checklists, we're applying goal setting, different methods that we've talked about with Zoe, with coping on our nerves, with our grounding techniques. Stop, and your thought stopping processes. The pre-performance plan and routines, how to establish, how to start thinking about what works for you and how to develop an approach. And then on top of that, the checklists and cue cards tailored for you, reinforcing aspects of a plan or an approach that is appropriate for you, that reinforces behaviors in your context, that gets you ready for that peak performance. And then again, probably the most important aspect out of all of it was the task simulation linking to imagery. Practice, practice, practice. Whether you get to do it in the pool or not, If you think how often you'll train in a week, the amount of hours you contribute to practicing your technique, your skills in the water, the environment, why not apply a bit of time and practice to visualizing? You don't need a lot of physical energy to do that. You can almost be part of your switching off at bedtime, like we've talked about. It's an opportunity to really engage with your mind and how it can connect to your body and understand yourself better, more in depth. And out of all this, you're preparing for when things go wrong, that defining characteristic. Set yourself up to be as ready as you possibly can, to be confident and to be ready for that peak performance pursuit, that base camp confidence. Are you going to make yourself as confident as you can be striving towards your goals? So that kind of covers the majority of the session there. With what's to come and where we've been, we've got peak performance, or preparing for peak performance 2, and we're looking specifically at race day behaviors and routines. We're going to reinforce our plans and routines. Again, we'll touch on it just to refresh those that maybe missed this session, then thinking specifically how we conduct ourselves on the day of, how it connects to what we've covered. And the key skills specifically looking at our race day behaviors. We'll be talking about some pre-performance strategies. Key aspects is recovery windows. I know Alan was really keen to touch on the napping and nutrition aspect. These windows are really key to learn and understand moving forward, particularly at multi-discipline or multi-race events that you might be engaging in over multiple days. Then we'll look at instructional self-talk. And then that again links back to kind of imagery, that PMR, controlling your internal narrative. And then above all else, the call room behaviors, coping and routines, how to really conduct yourself in the arena environment. And just in general, putting all of this together and really understanding it towards, in a timely manner, Scottish short course potentially, which is around the corner, or any other short course opportunities for racing. So I think that sums up the chat for today. Hope that was engaging enough. As always, we've come in under the hour, which will be important, especially for those who want to jump off to ISL. Yeah, I think that went reasonably well. Hope you took something away from it. If all else, confidence.
Just before you wrap up, Jack, could I get everyone to just give us a wee indication in the chat box how you feel about joining an hour early next time? So I think, Jack, you were saying we collide again with ISL.
Yeah,
so
we could maybe start at 5 just to avoid the clash potentially. You just react with a thumbs up would probably be the best way. If that's something that you want to happen. Yeah, I think that would be the consensus.
Okay.
Can review that, but yeah. Well, maybe not if we're thinking about galas and whatnot. Maybe review that. We'll have a think about that.
Yep. Can have a chat, and then when the link comes out from Shona, you'll all get the chance to see it then anyway, in case it is galas that we collide with. So I dare say ISL can be watched back, as can this. Galas cannot. So yeah, we'll keep you posted. Okay. If anyone's got any questions on today, put it in the chat box, unmute. If you're happier to wait till some folk have left, stay on, that's all right, you can do that. Beyond that, Jack, Zoe, Alan, if we've got anything else, or are we done?
Right, are there any rogue questions? I think that's us wrapped up.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jamie. Much appreciated. Well done, everybody. Chat in the groups that I dipped into was very good indeed. Hope we get a chance to practice and rehearse some of those strategies over the coming weeks, and look forward to seeing them in practice at the Winter Short Course meet in December. See you all for a change of plan, change of pace next week, and a series on land and priming for competition. We'll give you some tools and strategies for that. And then, as Jack says, we're back to himself and Joe in a couple of weeks' time. So thanks again. Enjoy what's left of the ISL, and we'll see you again soon.
Magic.